moving forward. I yield back the remainder of time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back, and now I recognize Representative Phillips from the great state of Minnesota for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Ware. Let me start with gratitude to you, to the many thousands of employees at SBA who do this important work. Many of the same ones did it under the Trump administration that are doing it right now. And I don't think we express enough gratitude to those who are doing what we want people to do, which is to look after taxpayer dollars. I like this committee when the spirit is to restore faith in government. Casting stones and blame is absurd. Donald Trump didn't cause the fraud, nor did Joe Biden. I want to make sure that we go after the fraudsters. All of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to do the same. What troubles me is that President Biden requested $47.7 million to appropriate dollars to this effort. And my colleagues on the Financial Services Committee and in the General Government Appropriations Bill trimmed that by $16 million. So it's just a little incongruent, I might say, to say we need to go after this and yet not appropriate the resources to do it. I would like to make the case to all of my colleagues that we should appropriate the dollars necessary to go after the fraud. So if I could just ask you, Mr. Ware, does that $16 million shortfall impact your ability to do so?
It impacts my ability tremendously. It's important to understand.
Can you say it one more time?
It impacts my ability to go after the fraud tremendously.
Thank you.
It's important to understand that the supplemental funding that we had for our office runs out in 2024. Right. We had a lot of term criminal investigators. Mm-hmm. A lot of them would have to go home. It'd be depleting us at the time when the fight is the hottest.
So, Mr. Chair, I have great respect for you. I would ask that we try to appropriate the resources necessary to do what we all want to do, which is to eliminate the fraud and repatriate the dollars, reclaim, and claw them back. Pleased that $30 billion has been done so already. Mr. Ware, one thing I suspect, anecdotally and otherwise, is that a number of companies overrepresented their employee counts to obtain PPP and EIDL loans. Your written testimony provides an example of a bad actor who was caught doing exactly that. Can you shed some more light on that practice of companies exaggerating their employee counts and whether the SBA has been effective in your recommendations to crack down on the practice?
Sure. Well, at the beginning, we were dealing with self-certification as a general rule. And to be fair, that's what the law called for, to be fair. It was self-certification. You couldn't review tax records. You couldn't review much of the employee information as well, for speed. But since then, those things have been tightened up quite a bit. But the way it worked, it was pretty simple. I'm self-certifying, so there's nobody checking. So I could easily say 50. The fraud triangle is a well-known concept. There was pressure, financial pressure. Everybody, where we were as a nation, and then there was the opportunity with the lack of controls, and then you rationalize it in terms of, well, why not? Everybody's doing it.
Mm-hmm. So you spoke about data sharing between agencies to support your work. I presume that would include the IRS?
Yes, it would.
Are there systems and structures and technologies up to par right now in a way that is necessary to give you the information you need on a timely basis?
I don't know if it is, but I know that when we work through certain agreements, we're able to get it. But I would argue that not just oversight entities, but some of these agencies could communicate when it comes to issuing government funds.
Mm-hmm. I would just argue that it might not be wise to reduce funding to the IRS when we need to go after both fraudsters and tax cheats. But let me just wrap up by one more time just saying we can distill this entire hearing down into a simple question. We all agree that there's fraud. We all agree we should go after it. We should also all agree to resource it to the level that the administration has asked. We should not be cutting it by $16 million. It makes this entire hearing, unfortunately, nonsensical. With that, Mr. Ware, I want to thank you. I know hundreds of PPP and EIDL recipients in my own district say thank you. Thousands of businesses and millions of employees around the country say thank you. When we did this, we were under duress. We knew it would be complicated. We knew there would be fraud. I was here when we did this. I'm so glad we did, because if you look at our economy right now, the highest GDP ever, the lowest inflation now in the entire G7 universe, the lowest unemployment in my lifetime, my goodness, and the highest wage growth in a long time. I think we did a darn good job. Businesses around the country thank you, and I hope you can extend that gratitude to those that work with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I now recognize Representative Van Dyne from the great state of Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Inspector General Ware, it is good to see you again.
Good to see you.
And I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. And it's clear you understand the importance of today's hearing, and I just wish that we were being joined by Administrator Guzman as well.